Welcome, everyone. This is Bill Harris. Here with Kristina Jackson, our daughter, my daughter. My wife ought to get some credit.
I wish.
Along, and we're going to do another of our series called OmegaMatters, where we talk about all things omega, pretty much omega-3. One of these days, we might talk about omega-6 if we have enough courage to do that. But we are privileged today to have with us really the founder of the omega-3 story, Dr. Jorn Dyerberg from Copenhagen. Welcome, Jorn. Good to see you.
Bill, good to see you.
Yeah. This is great. We've been, of course, friends for many years. Crossed paths probably in the 90s, somewhere in the 80s, maybe.
80s, maybe, yeah.
But,
At Bill Carter in Seattle, way back.
Yeah. Well, you got into this about 10 years before I did, about 10 years before anybody did, as it turned out. So just by way of introduction, if anybody doesn't know who Dr. Dyerberg is, he is, along with his mentor, Olaf Bang, that's right, you said. They were really the ones who, the pioneers who went to Greenland and studied the question of why there's so little heart disease in apparently native Greenland Inuits, and ultimately led to the discovery of the omega-3 story, and it's grown phenomenal legs since then all over the place. But we haven't got time to talk about the whole story, but I want to just get started with Jorn and ask you, I know you've written a lot about, and this is the 50th anniversary, I believe, of your first paper.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
1971. So you were thinking about this probably in the late 60s, or somebody was thinking about this.
Yeah, but not on omegas, but we were just introduced to the concept of our co-citizens in Greenland, the Danish co-citizens, because Greenland was part of Denmark at that time. Now it's a sort of a Commonwealth association. But there was a lead article in our weekly medical journal saying, we have to dig in why the co-citizens in Greenland, the Inuits. At that time, the Eskimo was a word that we used all the time. Today, this word has felt maybe a bit awkward. I can't tell why. It means, as I'm told, the people who live from raw meat. But okay, that's a fair description. And to me, it has not anything negative. But nevertheless, the lead article pointed out that it was an obligation for Danish scientists, doctors, to illustrate or find out or why the disease pattern in our co-citizens in Greenland, the Eskimos, the Inuits, was different from Danes. And they point out amongst the most astonishing thing is their very low incidence of coronary heart disease, which was nearly never described. Okay, I was a resident at Dr. Bang's lab and was doing my thesis and making a new method for quantifying lipoproteins by agarose electrophoresis. And Bang said, Dr. Dyerberg, at that time we were not on first names. We were at Dr. Bang and Dr. Dyerberg, but that altered over the years. But we have to go up there and find out. He was a brave fellow. He initiated things. He was burning for things. I loved him very much. And I was sitting there with my thing. Yes, of course, thinking of coming to Greenland, riding dog sledge, an adventure. I was 31 or 2 or something. Well, that could be gorgeous. So he and we managed to collect money, a huge sum of $6,000 or $8,000 or something, enabling 3 of us go 2 months up there and living and trading all the stuff. Well, and we managed to get up there, and we managed to collect blood from 130 Eskimos, Inuits in fasting states. Okay. And we made lipids. We determined my lipoproteins and the lipids, and posted a paper in the Lancet saying that here's the lipid values and lipoprotein values of Greenland Inuits. And we were just thinking over, they had lower cholesterol, total cholesterol. And at that time in 68, 90, 70, the only thing we knew of as a risk factor for coronary artery cirrhosis was not even tobacco smoking, it was cholesterol. I mean, that was the thing coming up. I remember a cartoon in the Times where a hippie was sitting on the bridge in San Francisco with a handmade poster saying, handmade jewelry, no cholesterol. The only thing that people were discussing was cholesterol. And we found a lower cholesterol than in Danes, but not to an amount that could describe the difference.
Oh, okay.
In coronary heart disease. So we were left with an enigma. We also found very low triglycerides, but no one had ever described any risk between elevated triglycerides. It came 30 years later or something. Yeah. And coronary heart disease. So we were in Keith formally, and it couldn't describe the difference in cholesterol with the major difference. We can maybe return to that later on in our discussion in coronary heart disease. And then we did a lot of other things. And Dr. Bang had an old gas chromatograph, on which we could do fatty acids 1 or 2 a day or something. And we decided, just for the sake of it, we had 130 samples from fasting plasma in Eskimos, and no one would ever get that. So Dr. Bang said, we just make fatty acids and publish it. Someday someone will find it interesting. And we spent 2 years or something doing gas chromatography, and then we found 2 fatty acids we'd never seen before. And I went to America to visit Ralph Holman, the famous gas chromatograph and lipid analysis, and said, Jorn, these are omega-3 fatty acids. Okay. And their names are eicosapentaenoic acid and docosahexaenoic acid. And the only thing I said, say it again. Never heard. Never heard. Now every housewife can, oh, this is not high enough in eicosapentaenoic acid or whatever. And then we came home and we published the paper in American Journal of Clinical Nutrition. And at the same time, it came up that in Sweden, they found out
Samuelson.
That there were some new prostaglandins coming from arachidonic acid that promoted prostaglandin aggregation, thrombocyte aggregation, and then came Dr. Vane in Wellcome together with Moncada, saying we found a new prostacyclin X that inhibit platelet aggregation, and thereby there's a balance in thrombosis generation by generating pro-aggregatory and anti-aggregatory.
Yeah. So was the theory of atherosclerosis in those days that it was a thrombotic disease?
Yeah, they were, of course, the thrombotic issue, but we never discussed the going into this. But of course, the high cholesterol and the enzyme ruining promoted thrombosis by just clotting the blood.
Yeah.
And then we got the idea, what if there was another balance? And if it was from omega-3 eicosapentaenoic acid, the only fatty acid in the omega-3 family, we thought right at that time. And the strange thing is that now 50 years later, it's in a way coming up again. Reduced study has ignited the EPA story again. But I should to London to join a meeting, and I was sitting on a small hotel room, and I decided to call Dr. Vane. He was head of Wellcome Research. And I called him and got his secretary, and after shoot, yeah, Dr. Vane will have 5 minutes with you. Okay, and I started. Half an hour later, he said, Jorn, where are you sitting? I'm sitting in a hotel in central London. We'll send a car down for you. And then he
really.
And then I spent a month or 2 at his lab, not directly, but afterwards. And we found out that PGI3 actually could be generated, and we published it in the Lancet. And then we fused the ignite of the story about the omega-3 fatty acids.
Right. And it was all EPA, or DHA was not part of the program.
Completely, no. This was a long fellow sitting up there, and we didn't even know it was rich in our brains. And how should we know? Nobody had published it. Maybe there was some remote paper. No, nobody know a thing about any of these fatty acids.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting. Had you been doing fatty acid research? I mean, you had a gas chromatograph in your lab.
No, that was no story. Actually, Dr. Bang, 15 years earlier, there was a story of Dr. Ovron from Norway telling people that linolenic acid was good for your health. And he published that in the Lancet. And he was a very famous Norwegian scientist. And it came out that the data was not that good, but his assistant just cooked it a bit because he was so sorry when Dr. Owen was sad about bad results. So he just made the results a bit better. So his paper that was rather famous in the Lancet had to be retracted because there wasn't any association between, and you maybe have documented that far later, there wasn't any association between linolenic acid and coronary heart disease. So he had to retract that paper. But at that time when it was blown up, Dr. Bang had bought a gas chromatograph. So it was there at his lab. It hadn't been working for years. And we refused it and made it work. With the selenium iodine detector and all that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's
strange coincidence that made us make fatty acids finding the EPA and the DHA and writing a paper together with Dr. Vane and Salvador Moncada on EPA and the protection against thrombosis and atherosclerosis.
You were just there at the right time with the right observations, weren't you?
Yeah.
It was the epidemiology. You didn't really do the epidemiology in Greenland. Others had done that.
No, there were papers, and when we wrote about it, there were also comments in our paper. Yes, we have been doctors here for 30 years. I've never seen a coronary heart attack, and so on and so on. But this wasn't solid data. Later on, I actually wrote an epidemiological paper together with the epidemiologist, Dr. Bjerregaard, an international journal of epidemiology. And I just was looking for it, and I found it here. It's mortality from ischemic heart disease and cerebrovascular disease in Greenland. International Journal of Epidemiology, of course, from 1988, where we've again demonstrated, based on his data, that there was a low incidence of coronary heart disease in Greenland.
Yeah. What was that data called into question within the last 10 years or something? Didn't somebody write a paper saying, where's the evidence?
Where's the evidence? There was a Canadian group that wrote that some years ago and say they had never done any epidemiology studies. And I wrote back, what do you call this then? Indicating that he hadn't read it because he wasn't an epidemiologist either.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Is there a difference between the Inuits in Canada and the Inuits in Greenland?
That was the same data. We did a lot of that. There was some tendency and some, but it never substantiated in Canada. And again, now there's a new paper saying that we can't find any major difference between.
Right. That was published like in 2020. What was this?
Yeah.
Oh, it's Sendlepper or something like that. And
it's a Danish.
has the Inuit diet changed over the years?
I was looking at the data. They don't find anything, to be honest. But the strange thing is they don't find it in an area of intake between 0.75 and 2 grams per day, which is, to me, rather narrow. I mean, it wasn't like the thing we saw when we were up there. We didn't see any down on the highest range, 2 or something, but it was different days. But their index is on the other hand, between 4 and 11 in that paper. So that's
what was the EPA DHA intake or EPA intake in your Eskimos when you calculated?
It was approximately 20 grams per day. 20, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. And was that like all year round, or was that just seasonal?
Yeah, the food was the same there at that time all year round. It was based on seal and fish. And then once in a while away, but rarely. But it was seal and fish.
Yeah.
And so there was ptarmigans, but that was minor things. And then there was delivery of Western food in form of grain and sugar, and tobacco and alcohol. Yeah, which is a major issue. Yeah. But at that time, it was basically the old Inuit diet, but not in its purest form. Yeah. Then we had to go a further 100 years back, I guess, as well.
Is there anything special about seal oil compared to fish oil?
Yeah, there's been a lot of talking about whether it has any meaning if it's in SN13 or SN2 position. And I've been into that with PhD thesis over my life. And basically, there was no difference. And of course, there is no difference, because I remember you have to eat seal oil because it's in an SN2 position. And then I say, what does seal live from? Fish. Where are the fatty acids there? In 1,3. Okay. You put them where you like to put them. You don't ask the seal where to put them. You put them where your organism like to put them. Yeah.
And it's sort of politically incorrect to be eating seals compared to fish.
More merchandise. I mean, we have something where the fatty acids now is in a very fine position in the
special. Yeah.
But it doesn't mean a thing. No. Nope.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow. Good.
Yeah.
I think
it's over now.
Say again?
That's the story of my life. It's over now.
Well, it's not over now.
I'm just sitting and enjoying the rest of it.
Well, let's plan on coming back, because I want you, and this will take some time, to kind of walk through the last 40 years together and look at the highs and the lows of the whole omega-3 story, not just atherosclerosis, but when it got to the brain, when it got to human development, when it got into all these other diseases, because it's been quite a roller coaster.
Yeah, it's been a roller coaster. Really,
plus, you even got out of omega-3, got into trans for quite a while too.
Yeah, sure. I would. Yeah, I had a professorship in human nutrition, and through that we focused very much on fat, and then came the trans story, which we were very central in, and Denmark actually played a rather central role in merging or shifting the concept towards an anti-industrial trans fatty acid composition of our food. We were the first country, that legitimized a limit on how much there should be in it. And the European Union protested because that was anti-merchant, whatever. Yeah. But now they've fallen to the, they have agreed, but it took time. It took time. And if I should add, you said the roller coaster, it also took far longer time for us to broaden the omega-3 perspective. I mean, it took 10 years or something where, can't people understand that this is essential? No. We have other essential things too. Small club, but then it came, but there was a very long delay. And then if you point at roller coaster issues, then we were absolutely sure that we have found the enigma of the cure or prevention of coronary heart disease. Now I exaggerate. It was EPA and it worked, except that it didn't. when it came to studies. Yeah, well, the first study, the GISI study, published on my birthday in 80 something, born or something. Yeah, 13th of September in the Lancet. Yeah,
That was
that was
your birthday.
That's my birthday. Yeah, the GISI study. Yeah, but it was not a placebo-controlled study. So, but they found a 40% reduction and all that. But later on, the studies were not that positive, and it's today. It's so that what is the situation? Wishy-washy. There's no discussion that when you look at the association between high seafood eaters and low seafood eaters, there's a difference. But the studies are not that overwhelming positive.
Yeah. It's certainly not the silver bullet, but it is
No.
something people can do to reduce risk.
Sure.
Yeah. So we'll get back to that. I think at this point we better wrap it up, and we will get back with you with some more questions. And we'll schedule that again. Thank you very much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good. So we take another time, another day.
We'll take another time, not too far from now.
Good.
Wear the same shirt.
Oh, I have to. Can you
Remember that.
Good show. Good to talk to you.
Good to talk to you.
Good to see you. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you.